All right, we're going to give this a shot today. The last time the Mac and Mac guys got together on Tuesday was, because, yes, I was off on Monday. Comcast kind of pulled the plug on us. I thought we had 15 minutes of good Eagle conversation.
It was ramping up, too.
It's still up there on the site if you want to go check it out. We plan on giving you the full 2 hours today. No internet breakdowns. We'll see. Cross our fingers. You never really know. It's out of our control. But John McMullen and Jody McDonald planning on being here for you for the next couple hours. And we'll mainly deal with the Broncos and Eagles coming up on Sunday. It might be a thing or two left over from the Thursday matchup, and certainly the overall opinion that we have on the Philadelphia Eagles and the direction they're going is what we're going to do. Be talking about for the next 2 hours. Johnny Mac, you didn't get a chance to talk Eagles significant guys that practiced yesterday, a larger list on those that did not participate in yesterday's practice. Precautionary, or should we have some worries here about the game coming up against the Broncos on Sunday?
A little bit of both, I think. Obviously, throughout the season, they've gone through this with Fletcher Cox and Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey. Those guys are just resting, trying to get them through practice, through the season. We're at that point. I mean, week 10, you're going to be banged up. So a lot of guys didn't practice, as you mentioned. Avonte Maddox, Darius Slay got injured against the Chargers, so that was no surprise. We knew Josh Sweat was going to be in the concussion protocol. I do think there was a positive. Darius Slay talks. He's first. He's the leadoff hitter every Wednesday when the players talk, and he did speak. So that, to me, is a really good indication that he plans on playing. So that's one positive note. And then the surprise, I think, was Rodney McLeod showing up and didn't practice, had a neck injury. So that's one you have to keep an eye on, I think. That's the biggest one. And Devontae Smith showing up with a little bit of an elbow was limited, but he's going to play. So just the normal banged up situation after 10 games in the NFL, after 9 games, I would say.
Get it with the veteran guys. This is not anything new. This goes back to previous Eagles coaches, that when a guy gets to a certain age and experience, that they go easy on him if there's any kind of nick or anything. Shoot, sometimes a guy's probably 100% healthy and they don't even participate, and it is purely a rest day. Both Cox and Hargrave out of yesterday's practice completely. We know Fletcher's getting up there, Hargrave a little bit younger. The Eagles defensive line, rightfully so, is coming under some pretty good scrutiny because they haven't been productive for the last 5 weeks, except for the one big week against the woe-begotten Lions. They really haven't done anything. Anything to read into Hargrave and Cox both being out on the same day of practice?
No, that's the way it has been. In fact, from Javon's perspective, he showed up on the injury report a couple of weeks ago as banged up. So it's the same type of thing. They're trying to get him to the game as healthy as possible. But I do think it's indicative of, look, that guy was playing like an all-pro for the first month of the season in anything but for basically the last month. So you have to wonder, is that shoulder hampering him a little bit more than has been let on? So he's trying to play through it. And I always talk about players, that's why coaches have tremendous respect, because, if guys play through things like that and Javon Hargrave presses through and he doesn't look as good and he starts taking some hits, but he's doing something for his team, and you don't add that context into it, sometimes they take a lot of hits. And I think you're seeing that with that defensive line, with him particularly. And he hasn't been good the last few weeks. And the only thing I can come up with is that shoulder injury. I don't think he's healthy.
His shoulder is certainly a distinct possibility. The other one is, and you need to watch the All-22 and the breakdown of exactly how things are going, not something that an Eagle fan can pick up on a Sunday broadcast over the air network. how much is he actually being double teamed? A lot was made when Fletcher Cox wasn't making plays early in the season, and Hargrave was getting to the quarterback, getting sacks and the like. Well, they double team Fletcher on every play. That Fletcher's always facing a double team, but everyone knows he's one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL. So the opposition makes sure that they're not going to get beat by Fletcher Cox, which kind of opens things up for Hargrave. After Hargrave was up in the leadership of sacks after 4, 5, or 6 weeks of this season, certainly the other teams got to notice that when they're breaking down film. And so we got to give this guy respect, and we got to make sure he doesn't beat us. Do you think there's some of that if you're looking for that swing guy who's going to get the double team duties on someone along the Eagle offensive line, has it been more Jason Hargrave than it was earlier in the season?
Yeah, definitely more. I would still say Fletcher gets more of the sliding protections than Javon does, but it's certainly amped up. It's closer than it was at the start of the season. But I think that's going to start to change back if Javon continues to perform the way he's performing. I think the biggest issue has been in the run game. Where he's graded out as really one of the worst defensive tackles in the league, which is a bit of a surprise, again, because he came in from Pittsburgh, and that was more of his reputation than anything else. So that's why you kind of, when these weird kind of things happen, you start looking for reasons, and it's the only reason I can come up with. I mean, when you're trying to occupy blockers and trying to stop the run, you need your shoulders as a powerful defensive tackle. And he's trying to get through it. And he's trying to play through it. And I think it's affected his play.
And one of the things we do each and every single Monday this week, we were going to do it on Tuesday. I'm sure you and Jeff Kerr did it somewhat on Monday, is to analyze the snaps that each guy gets. They're not cutting back on Fletcher and Hargrave snaps. You're seeing very few spots in there for the Milt Williams, the Hassan Ridgeways. They're leaning on their two top defensive tackles a lot. So that's why I'm not sure. And they're not going to tell us. We just have to try and do our own best guesstimating and try and judge things like skipping practice on a Wednesday as to how injured a guy like Jason Hargrave is. They're not showing that he's playing with injury by the number of snaps they're asking him to play, JM.
No, I mean, he's not going to make excuses. He hasn't brought it up. And that's why I said that's a lot of times, when coaches respect players, that's one of the reasons, that's one of the gold stars, so to speak, because if they think that your backup, in this case, it would be, as you mentioned, probably in Javon's more Hassan Ridgeway, who's not played well either. The thought process is probably even Javon at 80%, you make up a number, is better than Hassan Ridgeway, and he's going out there and performing instead of saying, look, I'm not, comfortable with the way I'm playing up to my level, and you could say, I just can't go. So coaches tend to have a lot of respect for players like that, and they should. But yeah, it's one of those. Well, we talk about grades a lot, and player grades and Pro Football Focus. It's one of those things where it's a really big fly in the ointment, because nobody knows what someone's going through. Now, when it's evident and people are missing games and they're hurt, but there's so many players in this league that play through injuries that really affect their performance, and they're playing through injuries because their coaches think that they have a better chance to win, even with them at a lesser optimal, performance from a health standpoint. And it affects their play on the grade. And I bring up Javon for a specific reason, because he was so good.
Yep. And
then it's fallen off the table. So it's not like the guy forgot how to play. It's not that the guy lost his talent. And there's got to be something. And I can't come up with anything other than the injury.
And probably is significant injury, but I think the other teams have gotten wise and given them a little bit more attention. So I was watching NBC Sports fairly before I came on this morning on their Sports Center-like show. And on Wednesday, they do a feature, Ready, Set, Go, with our buddy Seth Joyner. Comes on and gives an Eagle analysis middle of the week, looking back at the previous game and looking ahead at the next game. And he made a point that's been well talked about for decades here in the National Football League. The combination of critiquing a team's defense with the defensive line and the secondary, and how sometimes the secondary can make a defensive backfield look great, or a defensive backfield can make a defensive line look great, and vice versa. Whether one could be struggling and the other one ends up paying the price. And it's one of those chicken and the egg. Which comes first? Is the defensive line hurting the defensive backfield, or is the defensive backfield making it look like the defensive line isn't producing? It's a really legitimate question about the Philadelphia Eagles. And most people, you're truly included, have been more critical of the defensive line than the defensive secondary. And Seth's point today was that, it really is both. It's not just one that's making it worse on the other, that the secondary isn't great and the defensive line isn't great, and they're kind of causing issues for each other. And I thought that was an astute and on-point point of view, which not enough of us have taken. Have the Eagles given up the big play in the secondary? No, they have not.
No.
That's the design of Jonathan Scannon's defense, is to make sure that they don't give up the big play. But they give up play after play after play after play after play. I don't have to restate the 80% completion of the quarterbacks, do I? Well, that's the cornerback's job, is to keep that from happening. Get your hand in and defend the pass every once in a while. They don't, because there's a lot of cushion in that zone defense on the outside. Now they've got a couple of guys who ended up hurt last week, but look at it. You just said Slay said he's a go for Saturday for sure, for Sunday for sure against the Broncos. Have we, I don't want to say under critiqued, well, yeah, I do, under criticized the Eagles secondary, specifically all three of the cornerbacks, including Maddox in the slot? Have we given them a little bit too much of a break and just chalked it up to, well, that's Gannon's defense, and they're doing a job. They're just not giving up any big plays, so that's them getting it done? Or is it really, John?
No, I pretty much said I think the cornerbacks have been probably the biggest surprise on this team as a whole, more than. And by the way, just real quick on Darius, he didn't say he was going to play. That was just because he talked on Wednesday. That's a good sign to me that he's going to try to play. But I just wanted to clarify that. But I think the corners have been really, really good. And I expect that out of Darius, but I didn't expect it out of Steve Nelson and Avonte Maddox. I think they've done better than expected. So when you come into the season and say, okay, who's underperforming, who's overperforming, I would put those two guys in the overperforming from what I thought they would be category. TJ Edwards did a great job on this, talking about this yesterday, and wrote about it for Sports Illustrated. He kind of put it on, on himself and the linebackers. Now, when you're playing the philosophy, so you can kill the philosophy and people, feel free. But when you talk about in the philosophy, what they're trying to accomplish, and the defensive line is not able to get home because the ball's getting out in, 2 seconds, and the first read is always there. But Jonathan Gannon is telling his cornerbacks, all right, the quickest way to get beat is the ball going over your head. So you're limiting explosive plays. You're accomplishing that part of the defense. So who's got to take away those first reads in that zone coverage? It's got to be the linebackers. And the linebackers are probably the weakest point of this team. So there's kind of a two-pronged thing here. You can kill the defensive coordinator and say, why are you putting so much on the plate of linebackers that aren't very good, to be honest? And that's fair. That's a fair critique. But if you're just talking about what's going on the field and you're saying, okay, who's not doing their job, I think first and foremost it goes to the linebackers. Now, it's been a little bit better now that TJ Edwards is in there, but that's only really 2 weeks. And then the safeties after that, who have performed pretty poorly, with the exception of Marcus Epps. You know, I was thinking about this. I was talking to some other reporters, and I said the best linebacker on this team is TJ Edwards, and the best safety has been Marcus Epps. Nothing against those two guys, but, you know, that's not Ray Lewis and Ed Reed. Let's put it that way. So you're up against it from a personnel standpoint in the back seven. So where I think people are valid in their criticism, I don't think they're necessarily valid in their criticism of Jonathan Gannon. Where they could be is he's got to realize that and say, all right, I got to do a better job of not asking whether it's TJ or Alex Singleton or Davion Taylor. Ask him not to do things they can't accomplish, and they're not going to accomplish anyway. So I got to figure out a better way to do that. And, you know, they're playing the Denver Broncos this week, Jody. Now, you look at the Denver Broncos. I got to tell you, they just traded Von Miller. We all know Von Miller, tremendous player. He's gone. You know, Justin Simmons is really good safety. That's a top 10 defense, and that's a top 10 defense in basically every single category. I mean, amazingly consistent. And they don't have a lot of stars on that defense. You look at the names and you go, how the hell is Vic Fangio accomplishing this with this group? And we'll talk a little bit about that later in the show with somebody on the inside, because I'm interested. Because I look at the names and I go, this is stinking impressive. So I think that's where people should focus the criticism on Jonathan Gannon. But if I look at what the players are being asked to do, I think the corners have overperformed.
Okay, and you need, again, game film to be able to see how far they're backing off on every single play and giving cushion and allowing the receivers to make plays and then reacting, being reactive rather than proactive. If you tell me that, hey, they're doing exactly what they're supposed to do, Darius Slay and Nelson and Maddox, at least, it seems to me, maybe that's because the position that he's playing, the slide, he gets his hands on the ball every once in a while. And I think he's a better tackler than either Nelson and or Slay. So that's why, if I was just using my own evaluation to grade out the cornerbacks, I actually think Maddox has been the best cornerback on his team this year. But there's a lot that goes into that. Yeah, Jonathan, get him up and start to play some press. Have we not seen enough? I know there's an overall philosophy. I know he comes from the Zimmer tree, and that's the way Zimmer has played for a lot of different years. But at some point, and
well, that's the ironic part. No, it's really not. Zimmer is always one of the more aggressive defensive coordinators. You know, he's, you know, the blitz doctor, whatever you want to call it, the A-gap guy, the overload blitz guy. But again, he's had the one player, you know, Gannon always tell me was the linchpin to Zimmer in Minnesota is Anthony Barr. And he's a really smart player. He's a really athletic player. You know, trade standpoint, I don't know. He's 10th pick in the draft, really high draft pick, really good player. Defends the run, defends the pass, great pass rusher. You can move him all over, chess piece, and then he's got Harrison Smith on the back end. So Jonathan talked about this when he was talking about pre-snap disguises. I asked him the question. He was specifically talking about Harrison Smith. He mentioned Minnesota. He was talking about a safety being on the line of scrimmage and rotating back. They do that in Minnesota because they got a guy who can do it when he's not on the COVID list. They don't have people who can do that kind of stuff here. So it goes into the more of the cloud coverage, the shell philosophy, and then you get, you know, Seth's talking about defensive line. There's always a blend. He's right about that. There's a blend of personnel and scheme, and the personnel on this team is not ready for any scheme. Look, you've heard this, Jody. I'm sure you get it on WIP. I'm sure you get the calls. I'm sure you get all of that and saying this is the worst defense in Eagles history. So I went back. This defense isn't worse than last year's defense. They're slightly better. Slightly better. It's like 363 yards a game down to 355, 26 points down to 24 points. Not great, just better than last year's, which obviously the train fell off the tracks last year. You want to be much better than last year. But my point is, it's not even worse than last year's defense. And then you look at the NFL as a whole, where they are, they're ranked 15th in the NFL in defense. 15th. That's there's 32 teams in this league. Now it's worse points per game. It's 20th. It's not great by any stretch of the imagination. But those people with those kind of criticism, they're just over the stinking top. I mean, they don't know what's going on in the NFL as a whole.
Here's where my critique lies of Jonathan Gannon. If you and Gannon said this, and I tip my hat to him when he said it. The problem is he hasn't lived up to his own words. That he wanted to build a defense, scheme-wise, philosophy-wise, that got the most out of the attributes that his players had. That he wasn't going to come in and just put his system in place and make the square peg fit the round hole. And I think that's the best way to have success in the National Football League, is to be able to evaluate your talent correctly and mold a scheme that not only gives you what you want and you stay true to your core tenets and values, but also gives the players the chance to do what they're capable of doing. Not asking them to do something they can't do. The whole Minnesota comparison thing, put a safety up on the line and still be able to get back on the back end and cover. If they don't have that type of safety, you don't do that, which Jonathan Gannon doesn't, and good for him in that way. But Darius Slay and Steven Nelson, I think both are guys who are capable of playing man-to-man press coverage. I think they're both of that level that you can do it. You're going to get burnt once in a while. Everybody does. You live by man-to-man press coverage. You're going to die by man-to-man press coverage every once in a while too. Giving up a 60-yard touchdown is not going to end the season. If you could actually get some 3 and outs, where you get on a third down, a tipped pass, a hand on a ball, knock it out of the receiver's hand. Oh, my God, they've got a punt. You mean they don't get 4 first downs in a possession? I think you got to be able to mix that in. And to this point, Jonathan Gannon hasn't done it. He did it against the Lions because the Lions
did it against the Lions. He did it against the Chargers. They played more single high against the Chargers than any other time this season. More blitzes against the Chargers than any time this season. Didn't work. So nobody noticed. Happened more early in the game than late in the game, and that's because they lost Avonte Maddox and then Darius Slay as well. So all these things come into it, but I think you hit the nail on the head, Jody. People have a problem with the philosophy, and we talked about Philadelphia forever. They want blitzing. They want Buddy Ryan. They want Bud Carson. They want Jim Johnson. They want a more aggressive style of defense. That's what it comes down to. They want blitzing. But I also know, and you know, because you've been in this town longer than me doing this, I also know that when they get blitzing and it doesn't work, look at the double moves and Jalen Mills, who I thought was, if anything, an overachiever that this town should have loved. And a lot of people did. I'm not crucifying everybody. When he would get killed on those double moves, they would just say, that's awful. You can't do that. Blah, blah. You can't win. I mean, the only thing that wins in critics' mind is success in winning football games and putting the best defense on the field. They're far from the best. They're also far from the worst. And I think that's kind of lost. And when you add in, if I say TJ Edwards is the best linebacker on the Philadelphia Eagles, I think everybody agrees with me now. Go find another team in this league that doesn't have a linebacker better than TJ Edwards. Nothing against TJ. And when I say Marcus Epps, now people will argue and say, no, Rodney McLeod's better. I'm saying this year, Marcus Epps has been the Eagles' best safety. and really deserves to be on the field more, if anything, than else. Now, I'm not talking about the past or anything of that nature. Same type of thing. Go around the league and find me a team that doesn't have a better safety than what the Eagles can put out there. Whoever you want to describe is the best safety on this team. Look at Denver, Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson. I mean, you know, there's a personnel issue here, and Howie Roseman is going to be at Pitt, North Carolina, to look at the quarterbacks. I don't know if there's any defensive players on those two particular teams. I don't delve into the draft that much.
Neither one of them are great defensive teams. I can tell
well,
you right
he better
now,
start looking at some stinking defensive players, because it's been a while since this team has drafted an impact defensive player.
All right, we'll come back. I want to follow up with what John was just talking about more specifically linebacker. We'll talk safety too, but the linebacker position. There's a history of it here in Philadelphia, and it predates Howie Roseman and Joe Bat. You can go all the way back 30 years.
Yeah, Jerry
30
Robinson.
Years since the last time they took a linebacker in the first round. Like, not one, not two. As of right now, 3 first-round draft picks. And John continues to say, I got to admit, I agree with him. Chances are they're not going to take all 3 guys. It depends on where they fall. They may end up trying to move one and be able to get a future first and another secondary pick added to it. But the minimum of 2 first-round picks. Could one of them actually be linebacker in this year's upcoming draft? I'll talk about that with Johnny Mack coming back. He did mention a little later in the show. We're going to have a buddy of mine on. Brandon Krisztal is a reporter anchor for KOA out in Denver. He's been covering the Broncos for the last several years. Good dude, knows his football inside and out, and is very tied in to the Bronco organization. Brandon's going to join us in hour number 2. We'll come back with more here on Birds 365 in just a minute.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass, free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Holy shit.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. 1 free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. So good, it just disappears.
When it comes to the fight against insurance companies, large corporations, and the healthcare industry, injured victims are always the underdog. But that doesn't worry us. At Messa & Associates, we're an injury law firm from Philadelphia, and we come to fight. Our clients know that they've got representation with a chip on its shoulder, and it's the same chip that makes Philly the toughest city in the country. Call 215-568-3500 or visit us online at messalaw.com. Messa & Associates, the toughest injury firm in Philadelphia.
Basketball is part of how we grew up in this city. And every morning, IBEW Local 98 members take their best shot, building this city, rescuing our community from decay, and inspiring the young men and women of the region to take pride in who we are, like the Hawks who will never die. Local 98 member, love tradition. John Doherty, business manager of Local 98, says it this way: the best way not to forget where you come from is to never leave.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the game. Go for the hits. Go for the fans. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass, free.
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
We are the Mac guys. He's John McMullen. I'm Joe McDonald. Hanging with you on Birds 365. We're counting down the days to a trip to Denver, where the Eagles go out and take on the Broncos. All time, Johnny Broncos, Eagles. Who do you think's got the advantage?
All time? Yeah, they don't play each other that much. I guess that by Thursday, I should have looked at this, Jody. I'm going to say...
I looked at it about 45 minutes ago, so...
I'm going to say Broncos with a slight edge.
The Eagles have won 8 of 13 matchups over the years against the Broncos.
I got to think that's been more recent.
Yeah, a little bit. The one thing that I do have to add to the conversation is the last 3 times the Eagles traveled out to Denver, they have come up on the short end of the score. And that, of course, is where this Sunday's game is going to be played. So Eagles have won 8 of 13 over the course of the years against the Broncos. They've lost 3 in a row out there. And I threw it out there just because it's a fun stat to talk about. They beat the Broncos during the Super Bowl year. 4 years ago.
They crushed them. That was a big game. You know what I remember about that game? Because we're talking about player grades. The Eagles destroyed them in that game. I don't know. They scored 50 or something.
Hung a 50 burger on them, yep.
Yeah, and, you know, I remember Pro Football Focus graded Von Miller that week as like the best player in the NFL. And Eagles fans just lost their minds because, you know, they're showing the highlights. And it was really just a great game plan, and that the Eagles used Miller's talents against them, and that, you know, it was sort of like people like play Aaron Donald like that a lot. They know they can't block him, so they just sort of let him go upfield and work in behind him and assume the other players aren't going to be able to carry their own water. So it was kind of both right, but, you know, when you get beat 51-23 and somebody's saying, "Oh, this guy's great," people aren't getting that. They got really, really upset about that. That always stuck with me.
Our old friend Carson Wentz threw 4 touchdown passes in that game. The long since forgotten Carson Wentz. And that was with one of the games on the way to the Super Bowl. But that was here in Philadelphia. They have lost the last 3 times. They've gone back out to Denver. But this, and we see too much evidence of this so far this year, this isn't the 2017 Eagles that won the Super Bowl.
No.
So if you want to compare these 2 teams by what they had done previously against each other, it does kind of get irrelevant pretty quickly, as a matter of fact. And they only play once every 4 years as an intra-conference game. The Eagles are a 2.5-point underdog, John.
Yeah, that's a bit strange to me.
Yeah, it opened at 3 and is ticked down. If I was prognosticating or guessing on which way I thought it was going to move, I thought there was a better chance it would move up to 3.5 than down to 2.5. That's why I thought it was going to be right around a field goal. We're not talking about a major movement here either way, but I would have suggested it would more likely go up than come back down. Where a lot of different people read different things into that. If you want to believe that smart money is moving the line, well, then smart money is saying the Eagles are better than a 3-point underdog as of right now. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it. But it's right around where it should be. The Broncos a 3-point favorite. These 2 teams, although the Eagles are 3-6 and the Broncos are 5-4, if you believe that home field advantage usually accounts for 3 points on the line, it means these are 2 very evenly matched teams in a toss-up game before they kick off on Sunday.
Well, yeah, and that's what I'm wondering. So what do the gamblers know about this Denver team? And what I said, I mean, if you look at the talent, you don't see a ton of talent. So maybe they're overachieving a little bit, and you expect that to regress a little bit to the mean. And then I think you're coming off, the Eagles have been much more competitive over the past couple of weeks. But what is that about? Is that about the opponent? Certainly it was about the opponent in Detroit. Better matchup against the Chargers because they're the worst team in football defending the run, and that proved to be true. Eagles ran the ball effectively again. To me about this game, Jody, I'm saying right off the bat, obviously we're not going to make our picks today, but to me more interesting than the picks is how are the Eagles, how is Nick Sirianni, we've been talking defense, and how are they going to play this game? Because it's so interesting to me. They morphed, let's be honest. Early in the season, they were read option, spread, all the ugliness after the beginning with the bubble screens. Those have gone away to traditional play action, run the football. Right when Las Vegas, Detroit, and the Chargers showed up on the schedule, if you look at the Raiders are, I think, 28, Lions are 29, Chargers are dead last, 32 against the run. So, smart thing to do from Nick Sirianni. Well, now you got Denver, who's top 10. I think they're 6th against the run. What is this offense going to look like? What are we going back to the original thought process? Are we going to try to run against what has been a strength of Denver? It's very interesting to me.
Yeah, and I don't think we know. I'm not sure that Nick Sirianni knows yet. I think he will make that up between.
Well, he better now and Sunday. You got to have the game plan in by this point. He knows what he's going to do. I don't know what he's going to do. I think it's going to be interesting.
I think he's certainly leaning on certain things and ways, but he's probably not formulated till a little bit closer to game time. I do want to talk about the Eagle offense, but I got a defensive question for you first, and not specifically about the Eagle defense, but what they're matched up against. It was only 2 years ago that the Broncos used 1 first-round pick, and I believe KJ Hamler was a second. He might have been a third-round pick. I should have looked that up. My bad. 2 relatively high picks in the draft on talented wide receivers coming out of college, and I go, damn, they're investing in their wide receiver core, and they got a chance to be good. Didn't know who their quarterback's going to be, but I said, oh, he's got some weapons to deal with now. This Denver offense should be much improved. Jerry Jeudy has been a disappointment. I'm sorry, Alabama fans. Sorry, Xander. Any Alabama fans?
That's not allowed. That's not allowed.
It is surely allowed because the facts are the facts and the numbers are the numbers. He, at least I had high expectations of him, so he hasn't lived up to those expectations. And Hamler has been hurt. I think he's IR. I think he's done for the year. As a matter of fact,
he's on IR.
Possession receiver from Penn State also hasn't exactly wowed anybody in his year and a half, and there's some explanations for it so far in the National Football League. But Cortland Sutton has stepped up big time for them.
He's a good player, man.
He really is. And Tim Patrick.
Yeah.
I remember when he was drafted a couple of years ago out of Utah, the mediocre wide receiver. He can be a possession guy. Maybe he can make some play. He's been damn good for them the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I thought he was tumbling down the depth chart after they used those draft resources to get both Jeudy and Hamler. He's probably their biggest play receiver. I did not see this one coming. So if, John, you're right about the Eagles wide receiver, the Eagles cornerbacks being the strength of the team, well, they've got their work cut out for them because a guy like Patrick can catch the ball if you're going to let him catch the ball. And then he's also a big guy who can make a little bit of a play afterwards. That does concern me going into this matchup this weekend.
Yeah, they've been, and Cortland Sutton is a really big receiver. I mean, really big receiver as well. So it's one of those weeks where you have the big physical guys, and maybe you don't have to worry about the deep passes as much. The people running by you, the ball going over the top of your head. Also, the quarterback. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater is, check down Teddy. 70%. So against the Eagles, that projects to be 95%. He comes in 70% against everybody. But a lot of that is checkdowns, and he's going to take the underneath stuff. So maybe this opponent gives you a little bit more of an opportunity to be aggressive. They have good players, but again, in the tight end as well, Noah Fant, who is a really good player, but just got off the COVID list, I think, so he's going to play, but he's not that big play Kelsey, type that's going to go down the field. More of a probably TJ Hawkinson-like level that you saw in Detroit, where you saw a ton of receptions, but not that much yardage. So maybe this works out a little bit, this group offensively, for what the Eagles are trying to accomplish defensively.
Yeah, I actually thought Patrick was the bigger of the two. They're relatively the same.
Oh, Sutton's huge. Yeah, he's
Patrick,
big dude.
6'4", 212. Sutton, 6'4", 216. So they list Sutton as 4 more pounds than Patrick. But I remember Patrick watching him play at Utah, and he was very good at going up and getting the ball, high pointing the ball, and just making catches over shorter defensive back that were trying to play it. Yeah, they got a pair of these guys. Judy's not a little guy, is 6'1", and he is the little guy of their wide receivers who compared to those other two. You better hope that Darius Slay and Nelson are up and ready to go, and Maddox in the slot as well by the time the game rolls around, because that's how Teddy Bridgewater's had a pretty good year so far this year. Those checkdowns, those big wide receivers, those quick hitting plays. We're only a couple of days removed from watching Herbert do that, get the ball out of his hands in only 2 seconds, get it to his wide receivers, let him make a play. You were going to see a lot more of that this week against the Broncos, John.
Yeah, probably until the Eagles stop it. I mean, that's, and certainly with this quarterback, we've said, I mean, Herbert's capable of gashing you down the field. Teddy probably not as much. So again, you don't have that other aspect where you can be concerned about him really going over the top and throwing the football consistently down the field. He doesn't want to do that. It's not the strength of his game. So, you got to use that kind of stuff to your advantage.
All right, let's jump back over to the Eagles offense. You mentioned that maybe the matchup this week will strike more of a balance with the Eagles, because they came into the Lion game, and I was impressed. I think you were impressed with Nick Sirianni, that he, although up until that point looked like a pass-happy play caller, knew they could run the ball against the Lions, even without their number one running back. I'm going to call him that until he is supplanted when he's got the option to not play if the Eagles don't hand him the ball. With his secondary run game in place, ran it effectively, ran it to a big victory, and came back and did the same again this week. Didn't know if that was going to be a one-hit wonder. It wasn't. They ran it effectively against the Chargers again, because statistically they were the worst team in the National Football League against the run. The Broncos aren't. So are we going to see more of a balance? And there are a lot of different ways you can analyze, take the analytics and put it to a game plan afterwards and see how it comes out. I was a little disappointed that Jalen Hurts only threw it 17 times last week. Now, that is something that you need to analyze the game and the way it's playing, and the fact that they didn't get the ball back for the last 6 minutes took away from the possibility of passing the ball late in the game, maybe winning the game. But just overall, end of the game, you can look at some numbers. Jalen Hurts only throwing it 17 times doesn't seem to be enough with me. Last week, the week before, I should say, when they played the Lions, they only threw it 14 times, but that was okay because they were up by 20 points, 25 points. You're going to run the football. You're going to move that clock as much as possible to get the game over and done with and get back on a victorious plane ride home. I still think the coach is trying to find that balance between the run and the pass. I don't think they're in their groove just yet. I don't think they're in that absolutely perfect balance of run and pass, as you suggested just a couple minutes ago. Maybe they better be this week, because if they try and overrun it, we could see a couple of stops and off the field pretty darn quickly, because the Broncos are pretty darn good at stopping the run. You got faith that Nick is going to be able to find that perfect blend, perfect balance of run-pass ratio this weekend?
Well, I'm not as big as a run-pass ratio coming into the game as some people, because I think, games have personalities, and that's defined by kind of what you said. I mean, if the other team siphons 6 minutes off the clock, it's going to affect everything. And when you have that huge time of possession advantage and long drives and everything gets limited, all that comes into it. If you're, I always say if you're winning the game by 2 touchdowns, Detroit, perfect example. Far more than that, the Eagles didn't throw the football at all. Why would you? You don't have to. You go to Kansas City when they're behind early, he throws it 48 times. So that's kind of I'm not worried as much about the balance as what you're trying to accomplish. Like early in the season, what I'm trying to say by that, I think the Eagles would get behind. I think Nick Sirianni would panic a little bit and would be, all right, let's forget about this. We got to try to get back. Let's throw the football, throw the football, throw the football. Got to be a little bit more disciplined, even if you do get behind in the game. But yeah, I mean, he has shifted. He has completely shifted this offense. So when you talk about Jonathan Gannon saying, I don't like to have a scheme, Nick Sirianni has said similar things. He's telling the truth. I mean, this is a completely different offense over the past 3 weeks than it was over the first 6 games of this season. And I guess the bigger question, there's 2 questions. How do you beat Denver, which is the less important question, to be honest? And, what are we learning about the quarterback? Where are we going with this team? Where are we going with this franchise? I've been talking about this. You know it. You're probably sick of me talking about it, Jody, all year. It's like, what are we learning? What did we learn about Jalen Hurts over the past couple weeks? Not much. I already knew he can make plays running the football. I already knew the unique part of his skill set. You think about the somersault play, the 3rd and 4 play. I thought that drive to tie the game against the Chargers, I've said it consistently, was the best drive of the season for the Eagles. And it gets whitewashed and, footnoted because it doesn't matter because the defense let the Chargers take the entire 6:07 basically with 2 seconds left off the clock, and it doesn't matter. But when you play the way they've been playing against Detroit and the Chargers to win the football game in that week, in that compartmentalized 7 days, it's probably the right thing to do as a head coach. I don't know if it's the right thing to do for this franchise right now.
And that's the balance that the coach has to try and come up with every single week. And you do have to specifically have flexibility to it, which is one of the things that I'll give Nick Sirianni credit for over these past couple of weeks. I was one who was questioning his play calling and his inflexibility, that he seemed way over-married to the passing game with Mr. Hurts still trying to find his way and strike his balance, that he wasn't giving him enough a break by running the football and establishing a run that would give him an extra half a second every time he dropped back to pass. And he's absolutely got away from the RPO game, which was such a staple of what the Eagles did for the first several weeks of the season. Yeah, just let him run a regular play fake. So I give Sirianni credit that he has shown that there are a lot of different ways to skin a cat. Yeah, I'm not sure he's going to do this week. That is one of the tentative things that I have about this game. I think the Eagles are in a position to win the game this week. I think that coming off the very tough, they're motivated. They're probably a little ticked off at themselves. They have played better on the road. I can go through a couple different reasons why I think the Eagles can win the game. The thing that's holding me back is I'm with you, John. I don't really know what Nick Sirianni's going to do as far as play calling goes. It will surely be affected during the game. I'm buoyed by the fact that I think he has shown here over his first 9 games as a head coach flexibility, that he's shown a hell of a lot more flexibility than his defensive coordinator has to be able to adjust on the fly and make calls during the game and have several different options. Yeah, just don't. Maybe when we get Brandon Krisztal on next hour, you give us a little bit more information about what the Broncos are doing and how they're capable of doing it. Maybe we'll have a better guesstimate as to how these
in theory, if you just look at the numbers, it's going to be tough to run conventionally against this football team. Now, I'm taking Jalen out of it. Jalen's going to get his running plays, going to get his running yardage because that comes off schedule, and that's tough to defend. But people are really hyped up against Jordan Howard, about Jordan Howard for the way he's played over the past couple of weeks, and Boston Scott. I don't think they're going to be able to turn around and run the football against this team. Maybe I'm wrong. But if you just look at 9 games, which is a pretty significant sample size, well, they've done a pretty good job stopping that kind of stuff. Whereas the Chargers and the Lions and the Raiders have not. And that proved to be true. So to assume one thing is going to be true, and those 3 teams can't stop the run, and the team coming in that can stop the run isn't going to stop the run, doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So if I'm Nick Sirianni, I'm saying, I'm probably not going to be able to hand the ball up to Jordan Howard and get that kind of effectiveness. So what am I going to do elsewhere? Devontae Smith is finally clicking. Dallas Goedert is playing really well. Man, they got to get somebody else involved. It's probably not going to be Jalen Reagor. So it's got to be Quez Watkins. They got to get something going.
All right, one more quickie before I want to get a specific Denver point in. Could that extra receiver be Tyree Jackson? And I'll be honest with you, I didn't pick up, but you were there, so you could see that the patterns he was running, if he was actually open, if he had made some plays. He didn't get targeted. He played X amount of snaps. We didn't even know he was going to be activated for the game, and he was. But basically, he was no factor. It's not a critique. It's just the facts of what transpired in the game last week. More out of Tyree this week? Will they try and make him somewhere a little higher on the reads that Jalen's supposed to have at his disposal? Will this be a Tyree Jackson breakout week?
No, I think at some point you're going to see a specific play call for Tyree to get him involved. But as far as being a big part of the offense, no. I mean, he's still, as I said, he's still a developmental
It doesn't have to be a big part of the offense to jump up the Eagle wide receiver target list, because not too many guys get targeted after Smith and Goddard.
Well, they played a lot of 13 personnel against the Chargers because they wanted to run the football, which is interesting because obviously Tyree is not a blocker in theory. So they had, Jack Stoll played a lot as well. And I think Tyree had 14 snaps in his first game, which is a lot. And obviously Dallas Goedert plays almost the entire game now. So, I mean, they don't have a lot of snaps to begin with, but I hear what you're saying. They need somebody, but that somebody's got to be the guys who play. I mean, Quez Watkins played. He was the receiver most of the time they were in 13 personnel. So he was the only receiver on the field. He played most of the game. And I think he had 3 targets and 2 receptions for nothing, essentially. And then Reagor has fallen off, and I think, I don't know what to say about Reagor at this point. I think it might be ready to pull the plug and just admit defeat. But from the Eagles' standpoint, it's like they can't even do that because the guys behind him are not worthy of being on the field. So it's kind of frustrating when we talk about the Broncos. I think, the wide receiver position is the frustrating part of the Eagles. We talk about the defense from a personnel standpoint. Seems like everybody can find receivers except the Eagles. Now, they got Devontae, put Devontae on the side. But, because Devontae's going to be a star in this league. And you saw him break out a little bit against the Chargers, had that you know, a little bit of a hiccup with the drops, but you know, I always look at, I said it with you guys when I wasn't here, CD Lamb and Javon. It seems like the new breed of receivers. They're going to drop the football occasionally, but they're going to make a ton of plays as well. And I think Devontae Smith is in that category. But think about what they had to do to get him. They kept missing and missing. They got to double down at the position and keep, I mean, why can't they find a stinking receiver? As a compliment, people are talking about John. Give me a break with John Hightower.
John Hightower returned to the rescue. What are you talking about?
It's awful, Jody. It is awful. So when we talk about Jalen Hurts not being able to throw the football consistently, and I think that's fair, but he also doesn't have receivers to throw. He's got Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert, who are good and really good players, and then it just falls off a cliff.
All right, and a quick aside, and we got to take a time out and get hour number 2 underway here shortly. This was when I knew you and I were going to do a good job here on Birds 365. I'll try not injuring myself while patting myself or you on the back here. We started in April. You and I had done a whole bunch of spots on WIP. Yeah, I heard John with, I think it was Tony Bruno, Harry Mays. I said, damn, that guy's good. Reach out. Hey, you want to come on my WIP show? So you came on with me a bunch last season. I've already thanked you many times for that. And you do a great job on a radio spot, too. So our buddy Joe Krause thought you and I could do a good show together because he enjoyed listening to us so much on the radio. So they create Birds 365. You go to practice every single day. I sit here and run the show, but you are the man with the information and the insight. Over the past 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, I think there are way too many Eagle reporters who get carried away, and to a lesser extent, Eagle fans. If you go back 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, when the Eagles actually used to have camp open and people could go watch themselves up at Lehigh and generate their own evaluations of players. Too many people, and fans are fans, shame on the supposedly educated media guys who should know better, would get so excited because what Eagle receivers look like in shorts. Oh, this guy, the breaks that you see on the out of the break, his hands. And I used to say, okay, I'm glad they look good in camp. It's better than looking lousy in camp. But people were setting expectations on Eagle wide receivers because they looked great in shorts at Lehigh, or they looked great down at the NovaCare complex for you media guys who get to actually watch all of the practice and the like. You didn't get sucked in, JM. You didn't come on Birds 365 and tell us every day how good John Hightower looks. John Hightower is going to, this is the breakout year for John, or Travis Fulgham. That last month was not a mirage last season. He's going to pick up right where he left off. No, you said, man, Devontae Smith can run routes. He is so much better a route runner than anybody else in this Eagle camp, and that continues to be the case during the regular season. I got to give you your props because you did not fall into that trap of guys looking great in shorts in August. That's going to portend itself to be great results come September, October, November, December. Well, it has not.
I think I said about Devontae when I first saw him, he looked like a different species than the receivers I've been watching in Philadelphia for years. Yeah, it was such a difference, but I've had the opportunity to see some really good receivers over the years. I covered Randy Moss, Chris Carter, and Jake Reed. So I kind of know what a good receiver looks like versus some other ones. But yeah, I always look for route running, number one, because I think it's kind of a lost art. So if you look around the league, Amari Cooper, guys who can run routes, Stephon Diggs, they just have a huge leg up because so many guys can't, and so many guys can't run it. And there's a lot of great athletes, and they make plays just on their athleticism. But when you can combine the two, that's when you know you really got something. Those guys create unbelievable separation. And that's where Devontae, you see the separation. Even when he drops the foot, he's always open. Yeah. And it's only going to get better. It's only going to get better as the game slows down for him. And as the Eagles get more proficient throwing the football, he's going to be able to put up some big numbers. But he also exemplifies what has been the problem for years and years and years. And even more so a team like Denver, as I said, they have good receivers. I mean, Cortland Sutton, I think, was a second-round pick. You mentioned Patrick. I don't even think he was drafted. Jerry Jeudy was a first-round pick. Hasn't, fleshed out yet, but I don't think anybody's given up. He hasn't been Jalen Reagor-like or anything of that nature. It seems like every city can find receivers, and this organization has had a really, really difficult time doing it. I think people forget Alshon Jeffrey was really good the Super Bowl year, fighting through injury, playing. But I mean, he came in as a really good receiver. It's been difficult from a developmental standpoint, and they've rotated through wide receiver coach after wide receiver coach after wide receiver coach. And, as good as, and all the good I'm dumping on Devontae Smith, and it's all deserved. The bad part of it, Jody, though, is that they hit on some of the other receivers. They could have went in a different direction. You think about, okay, what if Micah Parsons is here? We talk about linebacker. Look at what he's doing. Look at how he's hit the ground running. So it all has sort of a reverberation, a domino effect, a butterfly effect, whatever you want to call it, because they missed and missed and missed and missed at receiver. They had to go receiver again. Thank God they finally hit on one, but you get my point.
All right, so here's the question, and then we got to get a break in here. They going to do it again? If you said, I think about 15 minutes ago, they may have to just suck it up and realize Reagor's never going to be a first-round draft pick. He's not going to produce like a first-round draft pick that you want. He could be a fourth wide receiver on this team going forward. Quez is what Quez is. Free agency, that's something I do want to ask you about, but just draft first. Could they use, and I won't even put the 3 first-round draft picks, first and or second round. We'll let them drop down into the second round again if they want. Could they use one of their top 2-round picks on a wide receiver again this year?
You never say never because it's always about the player, but I would think wide receiver at this point, because they have so many young players that haven't developed, I think they would go more the Alshon Jeffrey route. So I think they need a receiver, but I think they would go more towards free agency and somebody who's kind of proven himself somewhere else.
He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We are the Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. Coming up in less than 20 minutes, Brandon Krisztal, Broncos beat reporter anchor for KOA Radio out in Denver, will hop aboard with us and give us more info on the Eagles' opposition coming up this Sunday.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass, free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Holy shit.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. 1 free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. So good, it just disappears.
When it comes to the fight against insurance companies, large corporations, and the healthcare industry, injured victims are always the underdog. But that doesn't worry us. At Messon Associates, we're an injury law firm from Philadelphia, and we come to fight. Our clients know that they've got representation with a chip on its shoulder, and it's the same chip that makes Philly the toughest city in the country. Call 215-568-3500 or visit us online at messalaw.com. Messa & Associates, the toughest injury firm in Philadelphia.
Basketball is part of how we grew up in this city, and every morning, IBEW Local 98 members take their best shot building this city, rescuing our community from decay, and inspiring the young men and women of the region to take pride in who we are, like the Hawks who will never die. Local 98 members love tradition. John Doherty, business manager of Local 98, says it this way: the best way not to forget where you come from is to never leave.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the game. Go for the hits. Go for the fans. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass. Free.
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
We are your MAGA guys here on Birds 365. John McMullen, Jonah McDonald, counting down the days to the Eagles and the Broncos. John, I said it before the season started. I've continued to kind of harp on it as well. Tale of two halves to the Eagles season this year. At least that's the way it looked on paper. When the schedule came out, it looked like a significantly harder first half than second half. And let me whine and bitch and moan one more time about the 17-game season in the NFL. It just screws everything up.
Oh, it's terrible.
There is no midway point. Yeah. You can't have an odd number of games.
It was
you got to have an even number of games.
It was halftime of the Chargers game. We're dead even of the season. Yeah, I'm with you. It's terrible. But we know what it's about. It's all about getting the extra money. And...
but here's the good news. It's about getting that extra money, which means it's only a matter of time before we had that 18th game. I'm telling you, it's coming.
Oh, yeah. No question.
Was it you who was on, or was it when we had BLG on yesterday? I specifically asked both Jeff Kerr and Brandon Lee Gouton, how long are we going to have to wait before the 18-game schedule becomes the new norm for the NFL? One of them said 3 years. One of them said only 2. How quickly do you think they're going to get to 18 games?
I think it's going to be a little bit. I'll probably lean towards the 3, whoever said that. I think because they have this, way they do business. You have to pretend you're for safety because of the potential litigation. So you have to pay lip service to that. But you also want the game, which is, flies in the face of the safety aspect. So they tend to try to leave a little bit of time, hoping the more people can forget about the hypocrisy. It's generally a strategy this league likes to employ.
But I'm hoping it's 2 rather than 3. Sorry for the safety of all you players out there. Yeah. I don't want to put you overly at risk. But
hey, with me on the safety part of it, look, if you're so concerned about safety, you probably shouldn't be playing football because it ain't safe. I got news for you. It's not safe. It's never going to be safe.
Any way you slice it, you're putting yourself at risk. So, a little bit more risk is what I'm asking for because I want to get back to an even number of games. And there's no way they're cutting back to 16. So it is going to have to be another game added to get to 18. Sorry to say that, friends. We were talking about the Eagles offense and what they're going to run on this Sunday against the Broncos. The Broncos defense isn't star-studded. They did subtract Von Miller. Chubb has been on IR all year long. Talk about being able to draft and or find players. The Denver general manager should be getting a ton of credit. I know that John Elway has stepped back from that position. Everyone always scrutinizes Elway about the quarterback anyway, that all the other moves that the Broncos make become irrelevant because Elway hasn't been able. He got Peyton Manning to come over and win a Super Bowl for him, which he should get a lot of credit for, but he hasn't been able to pick the quarterback of the future there for years. But he and his underlings should get credit. They built a pretty damn good defense in Denver.
Yeah, well, George, Payton is the general manager. He just got there, so he's a first-year GM. And, you know, we'll see what he can do moving forward. Had very well-respected guy. He was sort of like the new Eric DeCosta. He had about 100 interviews, and he was always Rick Spielman's right-hand man and never left. Finally decided to take this particular job. And they're overachieving to this point. It's a really difficult division, at least it projected to be that way. The Chiefs haven't been what we expect the Chiefs to be. And all of a sudden you look at their record and you say, wow, they're over 500. And yeah, I was looking at that defense because Vic Fangio has the huge reputation, and deservedly so. I mean, his Chicago defenses were unbelievable the years before he got this job. Really, I mean, if Eagles could want a defense, it would probably be that defense, Eagles fans, the way they played, so aggressive, a lot of it personnel driven, as it always is with Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks, and their ability to make plays on the back end. He's one of those guys. If you talk about, defensive minds, and the two names I always hear, we always talk about one because Jonathan Gannon. The two names you hear is Zimmer and Vic Fangio. Those are the two names that come up first when you talk to people in the NFL. And I don't think either of them are good head coaches, but defensively, they know what they're doing. He knows what he's doing defensively. And it's hard to play defense in the modern NFL. I say it all the time. And he's one of the guys who seems to be ahead of the curve all the time.
All right, so let me ask you an Eagle defensive question. What's the possibility? Give me a percentage that the Eagles not only change their defense during this upcoming offseason. This season's going to play out over the next 8 games. Defense is going to do what it's going to do, so you're going to have to make a little bit of a projection there. What's the chance, with the roster being the shape that it's in, that they change their defense from a 4-3 to a 3-4? That if they're going to take this thing down to the studs. Now, Jeff Lurie said last year when they let Doug Peterson go, it's a transition year. Well, they're trying to get some transition in this season. But if they say, yeah, we got to take another step backwards, at least defensively for the next year, because we're going to change it up pretty drastically and go to a 3-4. Any chance that happens, John?
No, but I don't think that means as much as it once did, because everybody, and one of the things with Gannon has been, he has used multiple fronts. I mean, he's used five-man defensive lines in essence. He's used 4-3 looks, 3-4 looks. So they have a multiple varied front, and most teams in the NFL do today anyway. I think it's about how you utilize the personnel. Like if you had Von Miller, you should probably use him as a stand-up rusher. And some people might look at that as a 3-4, but a lot of talk about Fletcher Cox and playing 5 technique and 4-eye technique, and essentially playing like a 3-4 player in a 4-3. That's been one of the issues with Fletcher, and not being happy. He just wants to play 3 technique. So I think a lot of that is overblown. I think it's more about personnel than anything else. And they don't have the personnel right now. The best blitzer on this team has been Avonte Maddox, who is, you mentioned he's had a good year. You think he's been the Eagles' best corner. He's certainly having a career year. He's certainly having his best year. And one of the things I've been pleasantly surprised about is his ability to blitz from that slot position. But when you think about great blitzers, that's got to be Jannard Avery. That's got to be Alex Singleton. That's got to be,
like I said, it will take some time. They're not just
Yeah.
going to snap their fingers and be that much of an improved
yeah.
3-4 defense. I'm talking about turning over the roster too, not just the philosophy, but a major roster turnover.
Well, his history, Jonathan, you know, if you look at Minnesota and Indy, they're not going to run a traditional, what you would think traditional 3-4, but they are going to use varied fronts. And he's already done that.
Yeah, not a lot of it. It's been
Not too much, if you ask Fletcher.
Yeah, he tries to throw a wrinkle in every once in a while to keep the other.
If you ask Ryan Kerrigan, well, Ryan won't be honest about it, but he's not playing. He'd like to play in the 3-4, but he's not playing where he wants to play. So, yeah, those are the criticisms I think that are legitimate. I think there's legitimate criticisms of Jonathan Gannon. You know, let Fletcher Cox play 3 technique. Let Ryan Kerrigan be an edge rusher. On the back end, let Darius Slay play a little bit more press coverage. But on the back end, I can't come up with much.
All right, we'll finish it up with this one. Then we got to take a break. And Krisztal from Denver is going to join us, give us some Bronco insight. I'm going to make you Howie Roseman for a moment here under pretty distinctive situations. The Eagles have 3 first-round draft picks. They have their own second-round draft pick, which as of now looks like it could be relatively high. Let's say top 10, somewhere around 10. Could be 8, could be 12. I think they're going to get better in this. So certainly a top half of the first round. And that would, of course, affect their own pick in the first round. Who knows what Miami and the Colts pick are going to be. But let's say they have 4 picks in the first 45 picks of the draft, okay? You got 3 1s and a 2. Let's say that they're going to take all 3 picks. They're going to use all 3 picks. They're not worrying about saving one for next round if they don't take a quarterback. Just for the purpose of this conversation, they're using all 4 picks. And let's say when they step up, there is a player at a given position that would be fair value. They're not reaching to make any picks. Maybe they even get a little bit lucky. A guy falls down a little bit and they get value at that spot. Those 4 picks, 3 in the first round, 1 in the second. Give me the positions that they're filling.
Well, I mean, 1 is edge rusher, no question.
Now, we're talking 4-3 defensive end.
Yeah, well, I'm talking just somebody who can get to the quarterback. But, yeah, an edge guy, either a Von Miller type or if you want to go 3-4 or if you want to go 4-3 traditional, anybody who can get to the passer. And that's why I use that term.
Right, but I say a 4-3 defensive end just because how have their linebackers done at blitzing this year? I know that.
Well, that's why
they don't have guys who are good at it, and they don't have talented players. But that position has not lent itself to getting to the quarterback at all in Jonathan Gannon's defense here in year 1.
But one of the problems with the labeling of players, and that's why I think one of the good things about the so-called evolution of football, most people don't use that term anyway. They use the term edge rusher because it's a better descriptive term. You're looking for a guy who can rush the passer off the edge. Off-ball linebackers, what I think you're talking about, that's what the Eagles haven't taken in the first round since Jerry Robinson. That's a different position. They need that position as well. That's a Micah Parsons position, although the Cowboys have used him as an edge rusher as well. And by the way, I'm surprised he's had so much success because he's short and he doesn't have long arms, which tells you how good of an athlete that guy is. So I think those are better descriptive terms. They're probably not going to have Steve Nelson back. So you're going to need another corner. You're going to need edge rusher first and foremost. You need an off-ball linebacker, but we know they're not going to take one. That's just the history of this organization. And they need a safety, a big ball hawking type safety. They need a lot on the defensive side. And there are others. They still need another defensive tackle. if you held me down, I would say Fletcher Cox probably ain't going to be here next year. So they're going to need a defensive tackle as well. They need a lot of help on the defensive side of the football from a personnel standpoint.
You were 4 for 4 on the defense there, John. I knew it was going to be a minimum of a 3-1 breakout. Didn't know it was going to be 4-0, and or you're saying even 5-0 that their first 5 picks go.
Oh, they're not going to do it, but they should do it. They're not going to do it. I mean, they should. They value offensive line. And that's something they should. They're going to take a quarterback. I mean, they're taking a quarterback.
Hold off on that. We got months to talk about that. All right, we got to take a quick time out because I see Brandon Krisztal is ready to join us. We'll get back on Eagles Broncos coming up on Sunday. Broncos very impressive in their win over the Cowboys last week. Our buddy Brandon Krisztal from KOA out in Denver is going to tell us how they pulled that off and what they can do against the Birds this Sunday.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass, free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that. Holy shit.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. 1 free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. So good, it just disappears.
When it comes to the fight against insurance companies, large corporations, and the healthcare industry, injured victims are always the underdog. But that doesn't worry us. At Messon Associates, we're an injury law firm from Philadelphia, and we come to fight. Our clients know that they've got representation with a chip on its shoulder, and it's the same chip that makes Philly the toughest city in the country. Call 215-568-3500 or visit us online at messalaw.com. Messon Associates, the toughest injury firm in Philadelphia.
Basketball is part of how we grew up in this city. And every morning, IBEW Local 98 members take their best shot building this city, rescuing our community from decay, and inspiring the young men and women of the region to take pride in who we are, like the Hawks who will never die. Local 98 members love tradition. John Doherty, business manager of Local 98, says it this way: the best way not to forget where you come from is to never leave.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the game. Go for the hits. Go for the fans. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass, free.
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
We are the Mac and Mac guys. Birds, got a big game coming up against the Broncos on Sunday. Here to lend some Denver insight. This guy's been covering them for years. He used to actually try and make me look good on the radio, or sound good on the radio. One of the best producers I've ever had. Now doing a great job on the air out there in Denver as the reporter and host on KOA Colorado. Brandon Krisztal joined us here on Birds 365. How you been, BK?
I've been good, Jody. John, good to talk to both of you guys. Yeah, everybody in my house is sick. I do a podcast with Broncos defensive lineman Shelby Harris. He's sick, so we didn't tape it yesterday. We're taping it today. It comes out every Thursday. We've done it 26 straight or 25 straight. So I had to skip that. He had to miss practice yesterday. A bunch of Broncos missed practice, and we can get into that, but he's just a little under the weather. Brian Dawkins is going to join us. Doc has a new book out. He's sick down in Orlando. It's that time of year.
Oh. Well, let's start there, Brandon, the defense, because obviously I think the Broncos are, Vic Fangio. I was talking about defensive minds. You talk to people in this league, he's one of the first that is going to come up. It's been a top 10 defense throughout the year, second in points allowed. But you look at the defense from us, from the outside looking in, Von Miller's no longer there. Not a lot of big names. You mentioned Shelby Harris. Justin Simmons been a good player for a very long time on the back end. How is Vic doing this with this group?
Well, this is, I guess, probably in some ways a coach's dream / nightmare. But you take away the 4 starting linebackers to start the year, right? Bradley Chubb just can't get healthy, and it's going to be interesting because he's obviously a top 5 pick, and he's got 1 more year left on that 5th-year option next year. But a lot of people thought he'd get a new deal before the year started. Both he and Cortland Sutton, I know we'll get to the offense, but so you take away Chubb for now, most of the year, he's probably back. Their bye weeks next week after the Eagles game, so they think he'll be back then. Von Miller, of course, you mentioned, you take away a Hall of Famer, and that's going to change the complexion of your D. And there are 2 inside linebackers, Alexander Johnson, who's been their top tackler the last couple of years, and Josie Jewell, who's just a really smart player from Iowa that one of those guys coaches love, right? You're always looking for his replacement, but coach doesn't want to take him off. So your 4 linebackers have been out for now multiple games, if not almost the entire season. And they actually got faster and more athletic because of a trade for a guy named Kenny Young, who the Rams wanted to dump because they didn't want to pick up his deal. And he was their 2nd leading tackler. And then this kid, Baron Browning from Ohio State, who was the #1 high school player before he left Texas and went to Columbus, and has just been up and down in his career, played inside, played outside in Columbus, and then hasn't played at all here. He was hurt all of spring, all of training camp, start of the season. He gets healthy, gets a concussion after those other 2 linebackers go out. So he's finally playing. So you've got a bunch of linebackers. That's on the inside. On the outside, it's guys you haven't heard of that aren't worth talking about yet. Although this kid, Jonathan Cooper, a 7th rounder, had 2 sacks the other day. They think he might legitimately be their Von Miller replacement, if you will. And so you start with the linebackers, which are in a lot of ways a key to a Vic Fangio defense. And the back end, you mentioned Justin Simmons, but Kareem Jackson's a vet, a hard hitter. They draft Pat Surtain Jr., who's looking like a perennial Pro Bowl type of pick at one side. And then they had Bryce Callahan most of the year. He's banged up. Kyle Fuller's played like garbage until this past week. And then it's a bunch of guys up front that maybe you haven't heard of, but they make plays. I mentioned Shelby Harris. Draymond Jones is a kid from Ohio State as well, 3rd rounder that's really living in the backfield.
BK, we've been talking a lot the last couple of weeks about Jonathan Gannon's defense here in Philadelphia, which is bend but don't break. Well, it didn't break against the Lions, but it's pretty much broken against everybody else. They don't give up big plays. They sit in a comfortable zone. They let quarterbacks pick them apart underneath. How would you describe the Broncos defense? Is it aggressive, uber aggressive, passive like the Eagles defense? Just give us an overall reading on what you think the Broncos are trying to achieve on defense and have been able to achieve on defense.
Well, I think it's a credit to Vic Fangio. You talk about how well regarded he is, and Brandon Staley's a head coach after just 1 year as a defensive coordinator in LA with Sean McVay, because he came from the Vic Fangio treatment. My voice is getting worse by the second. Hang on 1 second. Sorry.
Take a sip there, big guy.
They're kind of a combination of everything, Jody Mack. They'll get aggressive when they need to and send blitzes when they need to, but they'll also disguise coverages. And I think that's what fooled Dak Prescott a little bit last week. What's funny is you look at what's going on with the Chiefs and their struggles, and people are trying to give different credit along the way. Go all the way back to how Vic Fangio played them with the Bears and then how he's played them with the Broncos. And the Broncos don't really get blown out by the Chiefs consistently. They lose every time now in the Patrick Mahomes era, but the game's always closer than you think. And that's a blueprint. Now you have to have the players to do it. You have to be able to get the pass rush and cover on the back end. But the too high safety look, Vic was the first to do that and say, okay, beat us in the middle. And they still were able to. But Vic Fangio is good at, I guess, unlike saying, this is what we do, no matter what, you're going to fit a square peg in a round hole, at kind of being malleable to the opponent and keeping you guessing.
Yeah, and Vic has done a great job. Now, offensively, and I think that's where he gets most of the heat when you talk about being a head coach. Now, they brought in Teddy Bridgewater to be the quarterback. It seems like a dream scenario, Brandon, for Teddy Bridgewater, playing a defense that just lets the guy complete 70% of his passes against everybody, and he's facing a team that gives up 80% when they have a quarterback with some accuracy. Is it that dream scenario for Teddy Bridgewater? Is it check down Teddy? Is he trying to push the ball down the field?
Well, it's been a little bit of both. And early in the year, I think he was second or third in the league, and maybe even at one point, number one in the league at shots at 20 yards or more. And he's also, he's had, and that was through like the first 4 weeks maybe, but Jerry Jeudy got hurt. Cortland Sutton kind of depends on the game. Sometimes he looks like the Pro Bowler from 2 years ago. Sometimes he looks like a guy who tore his ACL last year. And last week he only had one catch for 9 yards in Big D, which is, I'm sure, frustrating for a kid that grew up in Texas and played his college ball at SMU. But bringing Jerry Jeudy back, they get Noah Fant back this week. He was on the COVID list last week. He has a lot of weapons. And I just don't think Teddy or a lot of quarterbacks have had weapons like this, because Sutton's a legit Pro Bowler when he's healthy. Jerry Jeudy looks like a number one pick at times for sure. And then this kid, Tim Patrick, is going to get a $10 million contract somewhere, whether that's here or somewhere else. And then Fant and this other tight end, Alberto, are two of the three fastest tight ends in football. Darren Waller probably being the fastest. So he's got all that, plus the two running backs with Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams. So he certainly checks the ball down more than anyone would like to see, and throws short of the sticks on 3rd and 7, throws at 6, and the guy gets tackled. That's happened enough to, pull everybody in Broncos country's hair out. But he's a smart player that protects the football every game except the Raiders. He's had one or no turnovers, and then he's taking his chances. He's going to shatter his own personal touchdown mark, which last year was 15. He did 14 the first 2 years in Minnesota. He's at 14 right now. So he'll get into the 20s, and we'll see where he goes from there. But that's, I think, what makes Denver potentially appealing to an Aaron Rodgers type. Maybe they think they have a shot at Russell Wilson. Maybe they get in the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. Maybe they draft a young player. But they've got a lot of pieces on offense, and their O-line's been solid. They're just a little banged up right now.
Eagles and Broncos will be competing this Sunday. They may be competing for those quarterbacks that Brandon just mentioned during the offseason, which may be even more compelling than this Sunday's game. I want to ask you about one of the guys you specifically hit on, Tim Patrick. I remember him at Utah. I saw him play a little bit coming out for the draft. One highly regarded, a big guy, nice target, but didn't have breakaway speed or anything like that. Has become, as you just said, a potential $10 million receiver with the kind of numbers that he put up for the Broncos last year and again this year. Who broke this kid out? Who should be getting credit for what he's accomplished coming from a non-powerhouse wide receiver factory like Utah?
Well, yeah, and the Ravens had him first, and they let him go. And I know he was looking forward to getting a little revenge against the Ravens, and that just fell apart because they were without their starting guards, and it wasn't a good game when Lamar Jackson and company came to town. But he's a kid that's just kind of quietly worked, and he lived with Garrett Bowles his rookie year. I say rookie year, his first year, when he was on practice squad the entire year, and then he got called up. And he's a good special teams player, good gunner, and he just doesn't drop many passes. I think last week might have been the first targeted pass that he's dropped in 2 seasons. A catchable pass, I should say, catchable pass. Quarterback throws 8 yards over your head. That's not a drop. It's not a miss. And so he tried to tell us during the year, and I kind of called him on it. This was in a press conference. He's like, "Oh, I'm probably the fastest guy on the team, or one of them." And I was like, "Hang on." And this is when KJ Hamler, who's one other weapon that we didn't mention, he's got the torn ACL, but Penn State fans certainly remember KJ and all his speed. It's like, I'm pretty sure KJ and Jerry Jeudy are faster than you. But I asked a friend who's a personnel guy, and he goes, "No, he might actually be in straight line speed the third fastest guy." So he doesn't drop the ball. He's big. He's 6'4". And then he catches the ball in tough spots too. He's had no problem going across the middle. So there's a line of thinking around here that instead of having to pay Cortland Sutton 16, 18, 19 million, like you're having to play frontline guys when you have Jerry Jeudy, who is certainly taking the step. Last year he had the drop issue, but he hasn't really dropped much this year. He just needs to get the ball more. And he and Teddy, with that South Florida connection or whatever, on the same page. With Jerry Jeudy, with Hamler coming back, with those young tight ends, you say, Cortland, hey, we'll offer you a competitive deal, but we're not going to break the bank for you because we have Tim Patrick here, and we'd rather give him 10, 11 million bucks instead of giving you 18 or 19. That could end up happening. That way they can spend the money somewhere else.
What's it been like, Brandon? The Broncos bring in George Payton to be the GM. So you have a coach in place. You bring in a GM after. You still have John Elway. I think everybody around this league looks at Denver and saying, well, that's probably the place Aaron Rodgers is going to go if he leaves Green Bay. What is going on with the front office and big status and moving forward? Because obviously, you know better than me, but it certainly looks like John Elway may be thinking about trying to recreate Peyton Manning at the end of his career and trying to go for the Super Bowl that way.
Well, I would think that the only reason John Elway's still around is because they like having him around. I'll be honest, and I talked to him a few weeks ago. He's in the office more than people think, but John has, and I'm not trying to dismiss his role, he's become a figurehead. They owed him $6 million. They're not going to fire John Elway. But John certainly hasn't missed too many tea times. I think he is stopping by the office before or after he's playing golf. And I think he'd tell you that. When I saw him, he's like, oh, I love my job. I was like, yeah. You're getting $6 million to not work, really. George makes all the calls. This is a George Payton show. Now, look, when they're going to trade Von Miller, they want John Elway that day. They want him, one, to talk to Von. He's the one who drafted Von. And he's John Elway. You're talking about, without question, the face of the franchise forever and certainly the most important player. And maybe the second most important player, certainly defensive player, with apologies to my favorite Steve Atwater and to one of my favorite people, Champ Bailey. And even going back, guys before that aren't necessarily in the Hall of Fame yet, but should be Randy Gratishard and Carl Mecklenburg and even Louis Wright. It's all about Von Miller, I think. When you put a trophy in the trophy case, that puts you at the top of the list. So John's around, but excuse me, it is George Payton's show. And that's where you have to give a lot of credit. John and Matt Russell, who was his right-hand man, certainly built a couple of nice draft classes up that are playing. But George Payton's draft class is looking like a home run because of how well Surtain's playing, because of how well Javonte Williams is playing. The kid you're going to see at guard, Quinn Miners, he's a kid that all week at the Senior Bowl had his belly out. They made him tuck his belly away when practice started, like, hey, get on the field first before everyone's seeing your pasty white belly from Wisconsin Whitewater, of all places. Baron Brown and the other third rounders, now a starting middle linebacker. And then this kid, Caden Stearns from Texas, is a fifth rounder, got a couple picks, got a couple sacks of Lamar Jackson, who was in the dime blitz package. And I mentioned Jonathan Cooper may end up leading the team in sacks. So George Payton has really done a good job in the draft. And then I mentioned Kenny Young, Stephen Weatherly's another guy they traded for. So it's an attractive roster. I would keep John Elway around because he's John Elway. Maybe you cut his salary in half, and instead of paying $6 million, he's getting $3 million just to be president of football operations. Or maybe he moves on and he's just around as a special consultant or whatever, so you can bring him in when Aaron Rodgers is visiting, if they give him permission to go seek trades, so he can take Aaron to dinner or be part of that. So, George Payton, the power structure of Vic Fangio. George was in Minnesota forever with Rick Spielman, and that's one of the reasons he liked what Denver was. One, it's not a head coach that's going to tell you what to do, right? He wasn't going to a situation like that. But he saw how good Vic's defenses were in Chicago with John Fox and then Matt Nagy. And he didn't come in to fire Vic. He came in to win games. And Pat Shurmur's a guy he was with in Minnesota, and that's who's calling the plays now, obviously. So he's not sitting there with his finger on the button. I will say this. Had the score been the other way, and they'd been down 30-0 against the Cowboys, there's a chance Vic Fangio wasn't going to be on the sidelines against the Eagles or after the bye week. But now it's a question of, is he saving his job? Is everybody saving their job? Because they beat the Eagles. They're 6-4 going to the bye week. In this division, 5 of the last 7 games are in the division. 2 Chiefs, 2 Chargers, 1 Raiders, all have problems. And then the Bengals, who we thought were the best team in football, might be the worst team, or the Lions, who are the worst team. So Vic's record may end up being better than people expected when they're 3-4 and drop 4 straight. And if he has 9, 10, 11 wins, I know that's saying a lot. It's hard to fire a guy like that.
Agreed. And you give us a great wide view picture. Let me get really narrow focus. They trade Von Miller, whether it was the general manager, the president, John Elway had to be consulted. They traded Von Miller, a guy who may someday be a Bronco Hall of Famer.
Not bad.
2 and 3 in exchange for him, so they got fair compensation. Didn't get blown away, but the whole money thing, they paid it off, but they get out from under it next year. There's a complexity to the trade. But they traded Von Miller. Usually when that happens, the team takes a step back. When they lose as talented a player as him, they go out and go up 30-0 on the road against the Cowboys, who had only 1 loss. How did that happen? Who should get credit for that? Players, coach, the entire organization, and it may only last 1 week. If the Eagles go out there and beat them by 2 touchdowns, you'll be back on your show talking about how quickly can they fire Vic Fangio. It does swing that drastically in the NFL. How'd they do what they did last week?
Yeah, it's a good question because I don't know if they have the answer, if they found some secret sauce. Like I mentioned, some of those young players coming into their own a little bit more. And the ball bounced their way. I don't know how much of the game you guys saw. And, it's hard on an NFL Sunday. And I think the Eagles and Chargers were at the same time, right?
Yep.
So you have to go back to Game Pass and watch it. But there were just a number of plays. And Jody knows, John, you may not. I'm from Dallas. I'm a Cowboys fan. I'm sure if I looked hard enough, somewhere around here, I've got an autographed Cowboys mini helmet that I'd just be hiding. Because, look, I grew up in Dallas. Fan. Yeah, they won 3 Super Bowls when I was in high school. So I certainly keep track of every Cowboys game. This was just a confluence of events where the Cowboys go for it on 4th and 1 in the plus side of the field. Just a total disrespect to the Broncos offense. They get a stop in the run game. Justin Simmons flies up and tackles Zeke Elliott. Then they go for it again on 4th and 2 on an out route. Justin Simmons makes another play. So they go the other way and they score. And they're able to score again, and it's up 13-0. But then the Cowboys come out and they get a big sack, block a punt, but the punt is touched by an Eagles player beyond the line of scrimmage. The Broncos get it back, and the Broncos go down the field after the Cowboys player touched it and score there. Amari Cooper, there was one drop where it was easily a first down. I remember watching the replay. As they show the replay, there's nobody in the picture even. Like, there's no defenders, and he just drops it clear as day. Tony Pollard had a big drop. CeeDee Lamb it was just one of those days where everything was going the Cowboys' way. Teddy Bridgewater rolls out. There's an offsides on the other side. It wasn't one of those where he takes the free play and takes the shot and throws it downfield. He doesn't see the offsides, rolls right, throws a bad pick in the middle of the field, but there was an offside. So that got back. So just one of those days. I think they play that game again, and 7-8 times the Cowboys probably win. So I'm not sure we saw a Super Bowl preview necessarily, but it's still a huge win. And when you're up 30-0 in Big D with Dak healthy, they had just come off that Sunday night win. I think that it may have been a little addition by subtraction, only in as much as there was stuff going on in the locker room with Vaughn. I think he was just kind of over everything. You had those 4 straight losses after the 3 wins against subpar teams. And then there was issues with the Halloween party and him wanting money from his teammates. And some of those details have been out there. Some more probably won't ever get out there. But he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. Jody, you said maybe. John, you said definitely. He's definitely going to be in the Hall of Fame. He'll be in the Broncos Ring of Fame. But he's 32, 33, and doesn't necessarily connect with all these kids that are 22, 23, 24. Some of the older guys I think you don't have a problem with. But, you don't necessarily see the world the same when you've been doing it 10, 11 years. And he's telling these guys, I know how to win and all this. He had a really strange press conference on the Thursday before he got traded, talking about the guys in the locker room not knowing how to win and all this stuff. So, look, I love Vaughn. I wish he was still here. I wish he would finish his career, and maybe he does. Maybe he comes back. He cited Shannon Sharp, goes to Baltimore, wins the Super Bowl, comes back. So we'll see. But right now it feels like there's just a bit of a weight lifted off the team, even if they got worse on the field, just obviously.
Well, Brandon, you mentioned a lot of things going right for the Broncos in Dallas. A lot of young players maybe taking the next step. Consistency is a big part of the NFL. When young players have that big game, they start feeling themselves a little bit. Is this a potential trap week for the Denver Broncos?
Absolutely, John. With the bye week on the other side, we just went to Big D. Look how good we are. And then, I mentioned the injuries off the top. We'll see when they hit the practice field this afternoon how many of those guys who were just Wednesday, did not practice. We're just nursing stuff versus can't really go. But they will be without Garrett Bowles, very likely. Kid that filled in for him, Calvin Anderson's a pretty good young player that they like, and will probably end up being the right tackle long term. But their right tackle's got a sprained ankle. They're without the right guard now the rest of the year. And so Malik Reed, who's a guy I haven't mentioned yet, he was their team's leader in sacks last year. This is a guy undrafted out of Nevada that everybody was hoping or is hoping will be the next Shaquille Barrett, because they're both undrafted Mountain West guys. He led the team in sacks last year with 8. He's played more football than an undrafted rookie probably should in the last couple of years, because Bradley Chubb missed 12 games 2 years ago. Von Miller missed 16 last year. And both of them missed pretty much every game except for one half against Jacksonville when Chubb was out there. So but Reed had to miss last week with a hip strain. So they're just kind of banged up everywhere. But I think you absolutely have to worry about it being a trap game. And if you're Vic Fangio and Teddy Bridgewater, and we talked about Teddy, the quarterback, Teddy, the leader, is what's been really impressive. And I didn't know this because Teddy was talking, he would talk to us during camp and say, I was talking to my great mentor, We're like, who's this great mentor? Like, who's his sensei? Well, so somebody asked him after the game in Minnesota in the preseason, hey, who's your great mentor? He goes, oh, Bill Parcells. And so he talks to Bill Parcells via text all the time.
Really?
They got connected through Abram Elam, the longtime DB who played in Cleveland and Dallas. He and Parcells remain friends after they were together in Dallas. And he is an advisor, marketing guy with a lot of players, like Jacoby Brissett being one of them, and with Teddy. And so he connected Teddy and Parcells. So Teddy has this leadership stuff, and he'll say it on the podium. It's almost Russell Wilson-like, in that it's a little robotic and a little rehearsed. Yeah. But talking to his teammates, that was the stuff nobody knew about. All we knew about was his production, and obviously he keeps getting opportunities to play. So it's like, okay, what can this guy do? It'll be really interesting to see what happens with those other quarterbacks in the offseason. I know I've taken you a whole different way when you're asking about a trap game. But if none of them end up in Denver, if Teddy Bridgewater ends up with 28 touchdowns, 9, 10-ish wins, and 28 touchdowns against 10 picks, how do you not at least consider bringing that guy back if you don't have a better option? Even if you go draft a kid first round, say, hey, Teddy.
Well, Bridges can go more than a year. I would have thought it was Zimmer that hooked Bridgewater up with Bill Parcells, because he's a huge Bill Parcells guy.
Yeah, maybe. Although the only reason I know that is because I went to lunch with Abram Elam and he told me that they connected us. So, because Bill's in South Florida. Bill is down in South Florida, I think, part of the time. Probably when he's not watching horses up in Saratoga, right, Jody Matt?
Exactly right. All right, let me tie two things together here. Bill Parcells and the Broncos with Teddy Bridgewater as a side dish. Bill Parcells famously said, you are what you said your record. You are what your record says you are. And the Broncos are 5-4. And the Chiefs are 5-4. And the Chargers are 5-3. And the Raiders are 5-3. Everyone in the division's got 5 wins. You got 4 teams. They all got 5 wins apiece. 2 of them have 1 less loss because they already had the bye. What's going to decide this division?
That's a great question. And, the NFL sometimes just gets stuff right unintentionally, or maybe that there's a lot of thought that goes into it. But having all those division games late, especially in week 18, it was week 17, now week 18, I think it's going to be great across a bunch of divisions, right? When Derrick Henry went down and the way the Colts were playing, I thought, okay, maybe the AFC South will be up for grabs. Probably not. We know the NFC East is likely going to go to the Cowboys, but I think a bunch of these divisions are going to go down to the wire. NFC South probably being a really exciting one with the Saints and Bucks and what they're doing. But the AFC West, you can make a legitimate case right now that the 3 teams that aren't the Broncos could win the division based on how they've played and who their quarterbacks are. And the Broncos, based on what they did against the Cowboys, say, well, they're not going to be an easy out. And like I mentioned, they go to Kansas City in 3 weeks. So the bye week, then you get the Chargers here. Could be a win. They've beaten the Chargers here plenty, even last year with Justin Herbert. Then they go, or maybe they won there and lost here. Either way, they beat the Chargers at least once last year. But then they go to KC. I don't know what to make of Kansas City right now. It's mind-blowing because I'm as big a Patrick Mahomes fan as there is, and their defense is atrocious. But the fact that it's like he's reverted to some of his Texas Tech stuff where he knows he has to make plays to win, but he's not making enough, of the smart plays and just taking what's there. And the Chargers certainly have their own growing pains and maybe a rookie coach and a young quarterback that isn't ready to be anointed yet as a perennial Pro Bowler, but you have to like him. And the Raiders had 2 huge wins, but then a terrible loss, I think, at the Giants. I know the Giants obviously are pros too, and I like Joe Judge. But it feels wide open. So I don't know what it'll take to win the division. I guess it'll take the Chiefs continuing to play the way they're playing, right? Because otherwise it's hard not to pick Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Tyree Hill, and there's an outside chance they land Odell Beckham Jr. I don't know if that'll be a big bump, but it's certainly somebody you have to account for on the football field. So if he ends up there, you have to like the Chiefs even more. But their defense isn't getting better. It's not like the late Derek Thomas or our pal Neil Smith is walking through that door to help out. So I don't know how you fix it. And I don't know if Andy Reid can keep Steve Spagnuolo after this year, although part of it, to the Parcells thing, you're only as good as your ingredients, right? If you're a chef in the kitchen, and Spagnuolo can only do so much, right? You can't make chicken salad out of chicken, you know what, if it's too much of it.
Brandon, the last one from me. Thanks for pushing through as well.
I think my voice has gotten better.
It's gotten better.
Absolutely,
finishing up strong.
I'm on the mend.
Yeah. Now, Jalen Hurts, I want to hear, because I don't know. We're through 9 games here in Philadelphia. I don't know what the heck the Eagles have in Jalen Hurts. What does Vic Fangio think the Eagles have in Jalen Hurts? Any intel from that side of the fence?
If you'll give me 10 seconds, I can play what Vic Fangio said about Jalen Hurts yesterday, because I have it queued up right here. So you want to hear what Vic Fangio said about Jalen Hurts?
Free edit. Yeah, please feel free.
Let's see. So real quick, let me find. Here's Vic talking about Jalen Hurts yesterday. Okay. Here it is. Right here. All right. Ready? Some of y'all can hear this.
Good quarterbacks.
Oh, hang on. I got to do one more thing. Here we go.
All right. Live YouTube action. Live Birds 365.
Now, to be fair, every coach ever has told you how much they like quarterbacks and they're a good team. I don't care.
You got to Lou Holtz it up. We know that.
Yeah, I don't care what the record says it is. I know they're 0-7, but they're a good football team. So there, I'm gonna switch my. There, let's see if we can get this.
All right, waiting on Vic Fangio on Jalen Hurts yesterday.
Oh, are you not hearing it?
No, we're not hearing it.
No,
so you're going to paraphrase it for us, Brandon. Tell us what he said.
I'll tell you what he said.
Yes.
Great arm, moves around a lot, great in the RPO game, all this stuff. I'll tell you what I think of Jalen Hurts. I just don't think he's a everyday NFL quarterback, and I've talked to enough people around the league. I think that he is a guy that you're happy to have a backup as a backup, and he certainly brings a dimension with his legs that is coveted and hard to find. There's a few more guys that can run the way he does, and the RPO stuff, like he ran it in college, especially at Oklahoma, is a challenge, I think, for any defense. But I just don't know if he can make enough plays to win you enough games, right? And his decision making, and you see inconsistency with his completion percentage, if you will, or his ability to complete easy passes. So I'd probably have a better sense if I would have taped my podcast with Shelby Harris last night and given you a little more insight there. But I can't imagine Vic's looking at him the same way he looks at Patrick Mahomes or even Justin Herbert just yet. I would like to know what Eagles fans think. One of my best friends in the world is a huge Eagles fan from just outside of Philly and Delaware, and he and I talk every week. We talk almost every day. And he's not on board with Jalen Hurts. And I feel like I've talked to enough people that have been around the organization, and James Palmer, who covers the NFL Network, obviously his dad, Scott, right? Yeah. James will be a little nicer about it, I think, publicly, but I don't think talking to the people he's talked to there, the sense I've gotten talking to him a little bit is that they think Jalen is an every down NFL quarterback. So we'll see. We'll see how much Vic can fool him.
Because the Birds 365 opinion is still to be determined. We haven't written him off. We haven't put him on a pedestal yet. So, and this week will be a key week because he's going up against good defense that you guys have out there in Denver. All right, BK, we're wrapping on this. You're all right. You're a Cowboy fan. We admit it today. You're a former Jayhawk. We'll admit today. If I remember as well, you're also an Oklahoma wonk. Even though they were the competition in the Big 12, you always put the Sooners on too big.
I like Bob Stoops. Bob Stoops was cool to me when I worked in Oklahoma City. So.
Okay, good dude. And Stoop was a hell of a coach. What's going to happen to Spencer Rattler? He was supposed to be the #1 pick of the draft this year. Now he's not even starting for them. Is he going to the transfer portal?
Gotta be a portal guy.
Do the Jalen Hurts thing out of Alabama and go somewhere else and make himself an NFL quarterback? Is he going to go into the draft? What do you think's going to happen? You're an Oklahoma guy. What do you think happens with Spencer Rattler?
Well, I think he's kind of at a crossroads, right? That it goes without saying. But unlike Jalen Hurts, nobody was convinced Jalen Hurts was a first-round pick, top quarterback kind of pick. And whether Spencer Rattler is that or not, that's certainly where he was on the Mel Kiper big board type, rankings that are out there heading into the year. And then this kid, Caleb Williams, comes in and had a heck of a game against my Jayhawks. Actually, not a terrible game, heck of a play on 4th down where he took the ball from the running back that extended the game and won it for him. But if I'm Rattler, I have to go somewhere else now, right? You've got this kid that has taken your job. Lincoln Riley's moved on. I think they appreciated him while he was there. The question is, where does he go? And with the transfer rules, can he get on the field, and how quickly, can he play and remake himself? The issue with Rattler, talking to guys that have, scouted him, and certainly in Denver they have, is that he just doesn't make enough. It's similar to Patrick Mahomes, and not Mahomes in general, but Mahomes right now, not taking the easy play that's there, always wanting to dazzle you. And he can make plays that nobody else can. And the other knock against him is his size. Now, when Russell Wilson comes back, and if he gets the Seahawks back in the playoffs, and Kyler Murray has Arizona in the playoffs, and you've got all these guys that are under 6 feet or right at 6 feet, I say the couple that are starting making plays, that'll help Spencer Rattler. But unless he, I think, can convince somebody, if you can't hold your job at OU, how are you going to hold your job in the NFL, right? So I think that he has to go somewhere else. And then the question just becomes, okay, where? Maybe he goes to USC, right? Maybe he goes somewhere that's you have to go to a big time program, right? You can't go to Montana State, but goes to a big time program and does what Justin Fields did, or even Joe Burrow, right? It's crazy that Justin Fields beat out Joe Burrow, and look at where both those guys are.
BK, great stuff. Good catching up with you, my friend. Feel free to put that cowboy thing. You're smart to not have
it somewhere. It's a Michael Irvin autographed mini.
No. It's very good. This is the Philadelphia show. You don't want to be showing off that cowboy thing here.
Yeah.
It's great catching up with you.
And
buddy.
That's a Tom Brady autographed Patriots helmet. It's worth noting. So otherwise, my Hall of Fame. Oh, you didn't even really see this one.
Where? What the hell is that?
Hall of Fame helmet.
Hall of Fame. Very good. Very cool.
Terrell Davis, Champ Bailey, Willie Rofe, all my guys. My buddy that I call pals. John Randall, Andre Reed.
John Randall.
We'll be passing that along to his son one of these years. Brandon, good stuff. Thanks much. Appreciate you hopping on board. We'll do it again down the road. Good to see you, buddy.
Hey, thanks, Jared. Thanks, Jody.
Brandon Krisztal did an outstanding job. Talk about knowing his Broncos inside and out. Brandon does a great job.
He's got the KU. He's still there. He's got the KU. He's got the Jayhawk.
Yeah. Okay. He's a Jayhawk grad, former Dallas guy, Oklahoma. He's kind of been around, and he got stuck producing my shows in 2 different spots. A good dude, and gave us some great Bronco insight, and he gave us something to hang our hat on. Johnny Mac, the look-ahead game for the Broncos.
Yeah, I'm starting to buy into that.
Yeah,
a lot of everybody's sick out there. I'm not looking forward to going out to Denver. Everybody's sick, but I'm starting to buy into this.
Keep your distance from Brandon in the press box on Sunday. John McMullen, Jody McDonald coming back. We need to put a bow on this show here on Birds 365.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass, free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that. Holy shit.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. 1 free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. So good, it just disappears.
When it comes to the fight against insurance companies, large corporations, and the healthcare industry, injured victims are always the underdog. But that doesn't worry us. At Mess & Associates, we're an injury law firm from Philadelphia, and we come to fight. Our clients know that they've got representation with a chip on its shoulder, and it's the same chip that makes Philly the toughest city in the country. Call 215-568-3500 or visit us online at messalaw.com. Mess & Associates, the toughest injury firm in Philadelphia.
Basketball is part of how we grew up in this city. And every morning, IBEW Local 98 members take their best shot building this city, rescuing our community from decay. and inspiring the young men and women of the region to take pride in who we are, like the Hawks who will never die. Local 98 member, love tradition. John Doherty, business manager of Local 98, says it this way: the best way not to forget where you come from is to never leave.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the game. Go for the hits. Go for the fans. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass, free.
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
We almost be out of time for this episode of Birds 365, which was episode number, I wrote it down again today, 154, Johnny Mac.
I thought maybe you would get a little discombobulated after the Key West trip.
No, I wrote them down on the calendar. I can't keep them in my head. I got to write it down. Otherwise, I will certainly screw it up. Show episode number 154, Birds 365, successfully almost in the folder. I'm going to end today's show with a request. First of all, some thanks. Yesterday, I got Brandon Lee Gouton to come on the show. Today, we had Brandon Krisztal to come on the show. So I'm asking you to reach out to your good buddy, Brandon Graham, and see if he'll come on the show. So we can have 3 consecutive Brandons. This is all Brandon all the time week here on Birds 365. So all you got to do is get Brandon Graham to come on the show tomorrow. You got a shot there, Johnny Mac?
Maybe at some point, maybe in the off season. You know, Brandon's contractually obligated to a certain radio station that you know very well.
Yeah. So that I said it with tongue half implanted, if not fully implanted in cheek. Knew it wasn't happening tomorrow. Can you ask Michael K to change his name to Brandon, or perhaps find out if his middle name is Brandon?
Yeah, Mike was going to be on. Mike was going to be on. What day was that? Yesterday.
Yeah,
was
the Comcast day.
The Comcast day, and he has tentatively rescheduled for tomorrow. So hopefully we have Mike K tomorrow. Okay.
And his middle name may be Brandon. We'll find out if that's the case.
We'll say it. We'll go with it. Mike Brandon.
Exactly. Michael Brandon K to join us here on Birds 365. All right. Well, who you got? Who you talking to today? You got anything today?
Yeah, practice today. 12:45. Interviews at 11:30. But those are hit and miss. Whoever they bring out, that's who we get.
And we'll see. Hopefully you get someone good for the defense that we can talk about tomorrow. Good show today, buddy. Looking forward to talking to you again 22 hours from now. Appreciate it much.